Hey Courtney, welcome to When Spirit Talks.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
I cannot wait. I'm so excited to dive into numerology and what you are all about, especially with that psychic piece that you have. So I am so excited and I can't wait to hear your story and how you became known as the modern day psychic.
Yeah, that was quite the journey. I'm not going to lie. It's been such a whirlwind. I was actually working in Hollywood in the entertainment industry early on in my career. And despite knowing I had this intuitive knowing, these gifts that I've had my whole entire life that I couldn't put words to, of course, I just followed what I thought the dream was: work hard, hustle. And I was out in LA doing my thing, and I had amazing opportunities. I was really doing well in my career, but I wasn't happy. And my mom called me back at home in Canada, and she's like, "I found this spiritual community. You need to come home. Like, you need to fly home. This is worth it." I'm like, "My God, right?" This is like in 2014 when
Okay.
spirituality was still very woo woo.
Uh-huh.
And anyways, I came home and I walked into this event, and I'm not even kidding, Stephanie. I woke up and I walked in and I was bawling my eyes out. I had no idea why. It was so overwhelming, the energy. And my mom's looking at me like, "What is wrong with you? Like,
I
what's
just
going
got
on?"
chills.
Yeah. I had no idea that it was literally going to be probably the biggest day of my life. There was a fellow medium who was speaking that day, and there was a lot of people at this event. And I'm sobbing, I'm sobbing. He starts talking and he's literally sharing my story. And I'm like, this is really weird. And he comes to me, picks me out of the audience, and he says, "Can I give you a message?" And I'm like, oh God. And he goes, "You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Like, you are a psychic. You are so gifted, and like, you're crazy for not using your gifts." And it was just like this, everybody was
Wow.
just looking at me, and it was just this incredible moment. Fast forward weeks later, a big newspaper here in Canada interviewed me, and they are the ones who called me the modern day psychic. They were like, "You're very young,
Ah.
you have this very different approach to psychic mediumship and how you show up in the world." Again, at that time, it was like I really wanted everybody to know that it didn't need to be crystal balls and flashy neon lights, and that being a psychic, being intuitive, there was just so much more than that. And so that's where the modern day psychic came from, and I've held on to it throughout my journey. And it's really what I'm known by today.
Wow, isn't it amazing when like because I had a similar experience where you know what you are, you know your gifts, but until someone like slaps you in the face with their words and is like, "Hey, like you are this, like what are you doing?" that it like really takes hold.
It's so true. It's so true. And we hear that time and time again. I know I do in my work. It's like people have those wake up call moments, however those show up for them. And it's always so beautiful what unravels on the other side of that. And that was that moment for me.
That's amazing. Now, how did you get into numerology?
Yeah. So that's a whole other layer to the story. So
Ah,
I always was very fascinated with numbers growing up. Now, I was terrible at math. I was terrible at anything number related. But when it came to things like angel numbers, I was always very curious, why are we seeing this? And so for the first decade of my career, I would always talk about numbers, but I didn't really truly know the understanding. And then in 2000, and it would have been 2022 to 2023, I was just at this place in my life again, that very similar feeling that I had in 2014, where I was like, nothing's working. Nothing's working. It doesn't feel good. The psychic development piece doesn't feel aligned anymore. And I had started this magazine that's on hiatus right now. Everybody's asking me to bring it back. But Next Level Magazine was this baby that I birthed a couple of years ago. And I was interviewing another numerologist for our cover page. And she said, you need to study this. I feel like it was another one of those moments where someone said, "You
ah.
need to study this. You need to look at this. Like, I really think that this is your thing too." So fast forward, I was supposed to go on a trip with my partner at the time, and I stayed home because I had pneumonia and I was really sick. And I took the opportunity to just start looking at numerology. And that's when it all started. It just started to click, and it started to come together with everything that I've done and taught in my psychic development work up until then. So 2023, it made sense because I found out that I was in a year one. I wasn't supposed to understand what I was going through. I was literally in this initiation process that we see that happens in the year one. And so everything started clicking, and it just was landing so much for me that I studied and studied and studied. And now it's truly become my thing.
Wow. So have you used numerology in all different aspects of life, like for jobs, for financial decisions, for romance, like for everything?
Everything, even my house address. When I moved a couple months ago, I was like, what's the energy there? What's the number? So I literally use it in every aspect of my life. And that's the really cool thing that I don't think a lot of people realize when it comes to the study of numbers is that it can be applied to anything and everything. And once you understand what the numbers mean, you can use it, like you said, in your relationships, in your job, in your business, anywhere in your life, and things will start to make sense, which is really cool.
That is cool. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what numerology is, what would you describe it as?
Yeah, it's literally just the study of numbers.
Okay.
Every single number has an energetic imprint to it. And so, for example, the easiest one to kind of explain is like four, right? It's the number of structure and foundations and systems. Think of four walls, four seasons. When we look at how numbers shape our lives, it's really fascinating to see how they show up everywhere. So, really, numerology is just understanding the influence behind what a number means and what that brings into a space based on the energetic imprints, both sort of the good parts of the number and not that there's bad parts to a number, but more of the shadowy aspects of a
Yeah.
number as well.
Yeah, I like to say that with tarot too. Like you have the light, but then you also have that like shadow piece, that darker piece, that piece that you're like, oh, you know?
Yes. Yeah. So there's no good or bad in any of these modalities. It's just that, there's opportunities for us to really learn when we dip into the shadow parts of the number, for example. So I never like to scare people. It's just that, yeah, there's lots to learn. And it also can show us what potential we have too, which is just so beautiful.
Yeah, I think the lessons come when you start
Yes.
uncovering those shadows and like really diving into that. Because otherwise, they're hidden. I feel like it's a really big learning experience when you can actually tap into it without the fear, without, that stress, because there's always something like beautiful within that.
Mm, I love that. Yes, yes, yes. No judgment. This is where we learn. This is where we expand. This is where we grow. And I know, becoming working with numerology and becoming a numerologist, like that really has emphasized it for me because you can experience even both in the same cycle. You can experience the light part of something and also the shadowy
Mm.
lesson part too. And I think a lot of times there's fear that comes up around there because people
Mhm.
think like, well, it's not working, but it's actually working. This is what we're supposed to learn. This is how we grow, right? So
Yeah. Now, this question literally just popped into my head, and it is because I'm like attributing it to my work with tarot or like that psychic piece and how people assume that things are fated or destined or you're going to tell them something right now and 100% it's going to happen no matter what. You can't do anything to change that. How does that relate to anything you've seen with numerology?
I think that numerology does a really good job at showing us the potential of what we can create. And I think that, I'm often asked the question like, well, does it mean that everything's set in stone?
Yeah.
No, because there's so many parts of that number, right? If we think of the eight, for example, right? It's the only number that's focused on money, power, material things. But also, we can get caught up in sort of the ego, shadowy part of like being overconfident and sort of that icky energy that comes from ego. And so, it doesn't mean that, if you're in an eight cycle right now, you're going to make all the money or lose all the money, right? There's other aspects of that number, traits to that number that we can learn from. So I love using numerology for timing. I'm actually known in my space for timing, and I love that. And I think what's interesting, Stephanie, is that most people think, when it comes to manifestation or spirituality, we're not supposed to know the how, the why. But the reality is we're human beings. And the human mind wants to understand like why isn't something happening? I'm doing all the things, but it's not happening. Or, I feel misunderstood right now or whatever it is. And I think that these numbers remind us of, the potential that we can truly step into if we're aligned, if we're
Mhm.
truly working with everything, we're doing the deeper inner healing work. We're committed to our own path. And so yes, there are things that, can be set in stone, but also there is always free will. And the really cool thing about cycles is that it just builds on the last cycle. So something doesn't get done in one of the cycles and you experience more of that shadowy stuff. it doesn't mean that that can't come back around. Actually, your next cycle is
Ah,
just going to build on top of the last cycle, which, as an
interesting.
example, the last time we were here right now, whatever cycle you're in right now, whoever's listening, you were last here in 2016. So you may see that there's a lot of similarities playing out now this year as they did in 2016. Now, it might not be exactly the same, but we're building upon the lessons that you learned during that time frame, which is really cool when we look at this timing piece, because everything has purpose. Everything always works out. And sometimes in the moment, we can't see why something is happening. But then later down the road, we go, oh, I know that that was working out for my highest good.
Yeah, it's reminding me of those karmic cycles too. Like in one lifetime, if something isn't learned, you're just gonna learn that in the
That's
next
it.
one. And you made me think about like the last month or so, even for me, I've been having so many things come up. Again, not specific things as you mentioned, but the theme overall of when I was
Mm,
younger. Within a certain age range. So now I'm going to go back and look and see if there's any correlation between them because, yeah, it just kind of like rang a bell when you were speaking.
I love that. Yeah, it really is cool. I call it cycle mapping. When you go back and look, and if you have journals, if you have, Facebook memories is a really great tool to go look back at your Facebook memories and look at the dates and see, where were you in your cycle at that time? Because it really can show you what's happening. And I know, even personally for myself, the things that are happening this year are eerie similar to 2016 for me.
Wow.
And just like 2023, when I started numerology, right, it was the same numbered part of
Yeah.
my cycle as when I was woken up in 2014 at that church. So very cool experiences when we see, these layers of us unfold based on this timing.
Wow, that's so interesting. Now I know you can have your personal year number and your life path number. What are they or what's the difference?
Yeah. So there's a lot of numbers in
Okay.
numerology. A lot of people get very overwhelmed because there's so many numbers. Now, the numbers that I focus on in my space are
Mhm.
your life path number and, as you mentioned, the personal year cycle. The personal year cycle is focused on the timing aspect. It's more it speaks to the theme, the season of life that you're in this year. So it's the energy that you're moving through for the whole entire year of whatever that number is. Our life path number is the most important number in all of numerology because it is the only number that doesn't change because it's based on your birthday. And it also really is your soul purpose. Why did you come into this lifetime? What are you here to learn, understand, deepen, hone? It at the same time, it also shows us where our biggest challenges are because it's
Mm,
really what we're here to grow into. So most people who come to me say, well, I relate to my life path number, but maybe not as much as I would thought. And that's the purpose, right? Is that we're here to grow into that. It's our life's work. So for some people, they step into their life path number at a much earlier age. I feel like I really embody my life path 22, but there's a lot of people who are still on that journey, and that's okay because really it's what we're here to understand and move through. So it's really cool when we start to plug these numbers into place to see how aligned and how relevant the situations are in people's lives, and how it really does come back to this life path number.
wow, that's amazing. Now, how can you use these numbers to help you move forward in your business?
Yeah. So, for example, in business, I often look at, well, again, those two numbers. So, life
Hmm.
path really shows us what we're good at. So, for example, me, I'm a master number 22. I'm here to create a legacy that's beyond myself. And I didn't always see that years and years ago, but now I see that the body of work, the framework that I've created is this legacy that I'm going to leave, right? We also see, life path eights, they're really good at entrepreneurship. They're very focused. They're here to learn about money, right? As I said, eight is the only money number. So if we're looking at someone who's a life path eight, they might not do well working for someone else. They are life path ones, definitely don't do well working for someone else. They are like here to pave a path of their own. So a lot of people, when they start to see how what it is that they're supposed to really tap into, they can either validate for themselves that, hey, I'm on the right career path, or maybe, I'm going to actually do what I always wanted to do. I see that a lot with my life path threes, because the life path threes are the artists, they're the creatives, they're the writers and the singers. And so a lot of times people come to me and they're not doing any of that work, but they say, but I love to write and I love to draw and I love to create. Well, why don't we start with a side business? Why don't we start incorporating that into something on the side, right? And then it blossoms into something more. And so when we look at your life path, we can use it from that lens to validate or kind of direct you in the direction of what you're here to do in this lifetime. And we also see what your challenges are and what your greatest gifts are, which is beautiful. And we also, for me, and because I do so much business strategy in
Hmm.
my space, I will tweak your strategy based on your life path number. For example, life path ones do really well positioning themselves as the expert. So we create content around that. We create and position speaking opportunities because that's what they're naturally good at. So we can play into these numbers to really expand you and your business, which is really cool.
That's amazing. That's so amazing that you help people identify, like you actually help them identify more of who they are at their core. In our business, I feel like I've even learned so much about myself just by
Mhm.
opening my business. And had I not done that, I don't think I would have even learned as much as I have. So I feel like in business, I feel like we need as much information as we can get in order to really like thrive.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And the life path number really does a beautiful job at doing that. When we look at more of the cycle part of it and we bring in the personal year number, right, it really shows us where to focus our time and energy. So, from a business perspective, right, if you're, let me use the year 6, for example, it's a very home, domestic related year. It really focuses on what's happening sort of behind the scenes. Now, does that mean that your business isn't going to flourish? It doesn't mean that, but it may feel like you're being pulled to more home stuff, right? Extra responsibility. There might be some stuff happening in your marriage. Like there may be things happening behind the scenes. And so what happens is that a lot of people feel like they're forcing during a time when they actually need to integrate. We
Mm,
have growth cycles and we have integration cycles. So the odd numbers are actually our growth cycles, and the integration piece comes from the even numbers. So when we look at your timing in cycles, right, we see if someone's trying to push, 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 push in a cycle that's actually slowing you down for you to integrate, that's where we see resistance and people automatically go to, well, it's not working, I'm stuck. And it doesn't mean that you're stuck, but how can we use where you are in your cycle right now, the energy that's being provided to you, to really take you forward in your business? So these numbers are so crucial when it comes to anything in business, and it's blown my mind how it's supported me and the people that I work with every single day.
amazing. And for people who want to work with you, what does a session look like?
Yeah, that's always a fun question because it's always so different. So when people come to me for sessions, I usually, if it's the first time that I'm meeting with them, we'll go through some of their key numbers. So like I said, the life path, we'll look at your personal year. There's another number that I look at, two other numbers, your expression number and your what I call the alignment code. So what is the sort of the gap between where you are and where you're going and where do you get stuck? So we look at a
Mm.
couple of key numbers, and then I bring through the psychic messages and whatever I'm seeing. So that's where we always start. And then usually from there, people will come to me and we will work on things like content, we'll work on strategy, we'll work on, a lot of the people who come to me are big dreamers like myself, right? We always know that we attract people who are so similar to who we are. And so I attract a lot of people who come into my world and say, I have the biggest dreams, but no one else can really hold them with me. And how do I do it? And so we look at things like where they are in their cycle, and what would be the best strategy. And so it's always really cool when people come into my space and it really lands for them on why things haven't worked up until now. Because nothing that I do is traditional. I have a very unique way to coach and mentor my clients. And it all starts with the numbers. We look at your core numbers, we do a full numerology report, and we look at, what we're working with. And then we truly work with those numbers to take you to wherever it is that you desire to go.
That sounds divine. Like so divine. I feel like everyone needs to work with you just to get that input. What is the biggest shift you've seen with your clients?
I think it's probably that they believe that they can do this. And the only thing I think that separates like truly successful entrepreneurs is that if you have the drive, like if you are committed, because it's not easy, it's like it's
Mhm.
really not easy to run a business. I think that a lot of people have this idea that running a business is easy peasy, but it's not, right? It's a lot of work. And so it's really cool for me when people start to put all of these things in place, the numbers, the codes, and they see like, wow, I see momentum. I see things shifting. Things are happening. I'm getting beautiful invitations to speak. I'm getting press opportunities. I'm whatever it is. And people are like, I'm really being seen.
Mm.
And it's because they are at their most magnetic state when they're embodying these numbers. And so I think that that's always the most special for me when I see people embodying their numbers, using their timing, and really crushing it because they're working with the energy that they're being given.
Amazing. Now I have to do a deep dive into mine. I know I'm a life path 11. I don't know anything else though. I don't
Oh,
know my personal.
I love my life path 11s. I love you guys so much. You guys are the spiritual teachers. Of course, you have a podcast. Of course, you're doing this work that is literally the embodiment of Life Path 11. So, right off the bat, I know that you're truly embodying so much of that already right away without even deep diving. So, that is so cool to know.
That's so cool. And for, let's say, business owners who are, right, like I feel like the algorithm is crazy on social media and all of that stuff. Can people come to you and get tips and advice and coaching on how to navigate all of the difficulties they're facing with their
Yes.
business?
Yes. Yeah, that's a big part of it. What I really noticed in my space and even in myself is that I'm actually not a big social media person.
Mm,
A lot of people see me online and they go, "Oh my God, but you're always like putting out the coolest stuff." And it's like, yeah, but you know what? It's actually not the most comfortable space for me. I love being out in person and at events, and I
mm,
do really well with that. And so I feel like I attract a lot of people who also struggle with the social media. Like I really don't want to be on social media. I just want to grow my business. So we find different ways to do that, whether that's, podcasting, or speaking opportunities or whatever it is, like something that feels good for them. My life path threes, they do really good with blogging, right? So figuring out a way that naturally feels good for you so that you show up and it doesn't feel like social media is just a chore. It's something else
mm.
on my list that I have to do. So absolutely, people come and see me for this all of the time.
Amazing. And last question before we get into the spirit segment. Relationships and love. How can your numbers help you find the best relationship for you or navigate um like relationships that you have someone with someone else?
Yeah.
Do the other person's numbers impact the relationship along with yours? Like how does that all work?
Absolutely. I actually love the compatibility piece.
Ah,
I have, over the last year and a half, I've been doing corporate trainings for teams, team building based on compatibility within teams. So, what does that speak to? Absolutely. We can use numbers to really look at who you mesh with, who you maybe don't. And we would look at your life path number there. So, that's where we would look at the life path. And then we would also look at the cycles. So, primarily the life path number, but absolutely, right? There's some numbers that don't do well together. There's some numbers that do much better together. And so absolutely we can start to look at, and people come to me all the time with that too. I do couple sessions sometimes where people will come and will look at their partner's numbers, their numbers, and we'll look at where they are in the cycle. And some people will be able to like truly identify, oh, I see why you're having some problems in your relationships right now, or you're having some difficulties navigating because you're both in opposing cycles right now. So absolutely, this is one of the other areas, alongside business that we can look at. How compatible are you with even your teammates, the people you hire, your relationships, your friendships? Really, I mean, numbers can be applied just about anywhere, which is really cool.
that is cool because at work you can't choose who you work with, right?
That's
Like in
it.
relationships you can pick, you can
That's
choose, but
it.
yeah, that's tough.
It is, but what's really cool to that, just to add to that, is although, when you're in a workspace, like a
Hmm.
corporate space, for example, you can't choose who you're working with, but it can really amplify, what someone's strengths are. And if you have
Mm.
this awareness around, okay, that person, they're easily triggered, they're highly sensitive, they're highly emotional, right? We can create an opportunity to kind of be a little bit more accepting, if you will,
Hmm.
like, okay, this is part of who they are, we can't change that. And then sometimes people say, okay, well, I don't take this personally anymore because now I know that that's just part of what they're navigating, or that's the season that they're in right now, so I'm just going to let that be. So it's really cool to be able to bring in this work in just every aspect of connection and relationships, because even for myself, I've really been able to see, okay, I do really well with these people, I do not so well with these people. And so I even use it, where I even use it is in when I bring clients into my world. Are they truly a fit
Ah,
for me? Because are they going to receive what I'm going to be able to give them? Are they going to be open? Right. And so when I say I use this in every part of my life, I truly do. Every aspect of my world, I use numbers.
I love that. I love that. Because even for me, I'm like, I'm pulling my cards. Like, if I have a
Yep.
decision between two things, between prices, between dates, between whatever, like, there I am just pulling cards because I feel like it just gives you that, like, answer. Like, when you are so in tune, like, you are so in tune with the psychic and the numerology, and you just know. And then, like, once you know and once you see it laid out, you're like, I get it now. Even if I don't see it with my like physical eyes, like you get the energy and you totally understand like what you're walking into or what's the better position for you to take. So that's really cool.
Yes. I love that. I love that. So good.
Awesome. Now we're going to get ready to dive into the spirit segment. So I want to know what's one thing you always include in your daily routine that keeps you grounded and balanced that might help others do the same.
Hmm. So there's two things actually that I
Okay.
want to tap into. So we actually can, and this is my personal framework that I've developed over the years, is we can look at your daily energy number, which is
Ooh.
really cool. And it's blown up in my space. People are truly obsessed with knowing like, okay, today is a day one for me. This is what I'm going to focus on, or this is how I might feel. So I always look at my numbers in the morning. What am I working with today? What energy? So it helps me paint a picture of what my day could look like. And that's really helpful. That's the first thing. The second thing is I always ask myself, my guides, how do I want to lead today? What message do I want to share with the world? How do I want to lead? What do I want to accomplish? And it keeps me really centered and aware, because I think that a lot of people move through life very unaware,
Yeah.
and just kind of with blinders on, and they just keep going. But I think that between these two tools, they really help me stay aware and grounded of, what I'm creating and what I'm doing, so I can show up, authentically me in my day.
That's amazing. And it's funny because it reminds me of like what I do each day where I pick a card and then same thing. It kind of tells me about the energy of the day or what I might or might not encounter or how I should act or behave or think in certain situations that might potentially show up. Is it the same with you where sometimes like you're going through the day, you completely forget at the end of the day, you're like, what was my number or what was my card? And you're like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, totally,
Yep.
completely was not aware in the moment. But now I was like, I see it now.
Absolutely. I always like to revisit that at the end of the day
Yeah.
and like kind of do that like little check in with myself. Like, okay, today was a day 3. Did I feel like I was fully expressed? Did I feel like I was tested around my speaking and how I was communicating with people? So I always do that little check in before I go to bed. So that's a great, again, it goes back to that idea where, we don't always see it in the moment, but there's always a reason why we get that message. So I
What's
love
your
that.
number today? I'm curious.
Today I'm a day 8, which is a leadership number. And it's,
Oh,
yes, and it's a day of, yeah, we have 2 leadership numbers, the 1 and the 8. And the 8 is a beautiful number around just creating confidence and clarity and speaking. And so I love doing these on day 8s because I really do feel like I'm sort of like in my zone and I'm
yeah.
feeling that leadership energy. Yes.
Amazing. And what's your favorite story regarding your connection with spirit?
Hmm. You know what? This is a tearjerker. This gets people every single time. And it's always a story that I love to come back to. But early on in my career, I was in a grocery store and I was not truly trusting at that time of my gifts. So this
Mhm.
is really big for me. But I was standing in line and there was this adorable little old lady behind me and she was just buying yellow roses. And all of a sudden I'm checking out and her late husband comes through and he goes, you need to turn around and tell her I'm so proud of her for buying those roses. And in that moment, I'm like, I am not doing that. This is embarrassing. I can't. And I'm getting ready to leave. And he goes, no, you need to. Like, this is a big moment. So I was just like, okay. So I turned around. I said, hi, my name's Courtney. I'm a medium. Is it okay if I give you a message? And she kind of just stared at me. I said, you're buying yellow roses. And I'm getting this message from your husband on the other side. He's saying he's really proud of you. Can you understand that? And she just fell to her knees. And
Oh,
it was so emotional. And once she kind of gathered herself, she said, my husband passed a couple of months ago and he used to buy me yellow roses every week because they're my favorite. And since he passed, I haven't been able to have them in the house. Today is the first day that I'm at the store buying these roses, bringing them home and just trusting the process. And insert me there, right? In that moment, of course, I couldn't let that go by. It was life changing for her. Everybody's clapping, everybody's staring. And I was just like,
oh,
oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did this. Right. And so I have so many really amazing, cool stories like this over the years in my career, but I always bring it back to that one because I wasn't fully trusting of myself at that time. I was still in my, a very new space of really trusting my gifts. And it showed me that it's important that we trust that those
Mhm.
intuitive hits because it, it's incredibly powerful. And people often say to me, I'm not getting messages from my guides. I'm not hearing my loved ones on the other side. But really, they're there. It's just, are you really open to receiving it? Are you truly open to hearing the message? And so it was just such an anchor for me to remember that, there's so many messages that my intuition is giving me all of the time. And that moment, I changed that woman's life in that moment just from that message that came through for me. So how powerful is that, right? So it was definitely my favorite spirit connection story of all time.
Oh, I love that one. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, so amazing. You probably felt like it was probably a very healing moment for both of you, to be honest. Yeah.
It was so incredibly special. She just hugged me and we were crying and it was just so special. I had no idea when I walked into the grocery store that day that that was going to be what unfolded. And it was just
Mm.
a really beautiful moment.
Aw, so special. Now, what is one final piece of advice you have for listeners trying to improve their spiritual well-being?
Mm. You know, I always speak to this concept of your relationship with spirit being a relationship with yourself. And the deeper that you go in relationship with you, the deeper the relationship will be with your spirit team. Again, it kind of goes back to this idea I just spoke on around, it's not that they're not there. It's not that you aren't intuitive or psychic or have your own abilities, because we all do. I know that for sure. But I think that a lot of people get caught up in the stories and it being perfect and needing to receive the messages and people overcomplicate it. And so I love to remind people that you can tap into this gift. You can deepen this work and it's available to you. And our intuition is so incredibly powerful, but it starts with the relationship that you have with yourself, because that's where we really form this self-awareness. And the more self-aware we are, the more present we are, the more we're able to receive the messages that are given to us. And so for anybody listening who's feeling like, well, I feel intuitive, I feel psychic, I very spiritual, but I don't really know how to take the next step. Focus on nurturing the relationship you have with yourself. Go through the shadowy parts of who you are. Listen to the lessons. Listen to the gut feelings that you have. It's like building a muscle, right? Your intuition is like building a muscle. The more that you lean in and listen and respond, the more you're going to trust that, right? It's like you can't just go to the gym and work out once and then expect to have abs. You need to keep working at it. And it's the same here with building your intuition. The more that you show up for yourself and you prove to yourself that, hey, oh my God, I responded based on my intuition and it really worked,
Mm.
I'm going to do that again, right? And then we start to build comfort in that. And then eventually, I truly believe that you start to see that there's no other way, right? We start to really operate from this place of like, I'm always going to listen to my gut because it hasn't let me down and it's always guided me in the right direction.
It's that self-trust piece too that
Yes. Yeah.
you brought up. It's like, just as you said, being aware and like listening and receiving and then trusting it. Because I feel like so many people receive and get and are aware. And then as soon as it comes up, they doubt. And then they're
Yeah.
like, second guess, all that stuff. And I feel like for me, when I started trusting what I was getting, regardless of any external validation I
Mhm.
wasn't receiving or was receiving, that's when I started noticing and shifting and growing those abilities. So I love how you worded that and expressed that. And that advice was beautiful.
Thank you. Yes, that self trust piece is absolutely huge. And I think that the only way that we can really form that is if we start to do it and we start to actually prove it to ourselves that, hey, you know what? I can trust this. I can. And that comes with time. And
Yeah.
I know that people can do it. I mean, it's really cool actually to see how many people are waking up now and really starting to lean into their intuition. And I'm excited for everybody who's on that journey right now or in the process of deepening that trust with themselves. It's the most beautiful, expansive, powerful work that we can do.
It really is. And where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram. Although I said I'm not a big social media person, but I am. I love sharing, tips and educational pieces around numerology. So Instagram is the best place to find me. I'm Courtney Taylor. You can also visit my website, thecourtneytaylor.com. I have all of the good stuff there around numerology and how to work with it. So you can find me there.
Cool, cool, cool. Now, before we go, I pulled your card. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. You got the Daughter of Wands, which in this card is this silhouette with these fireworks in it. Now, it's funny that you mentioned this day was your leader day because this card, specifically for psychic business, is the card I always pull for myself when I'm going to be doing a group event or whatever it is, like a reading, and the message is spot on. And like it just touches the hearts of the people who are listening. And so that is like you today. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. It's like that message that you're sharing, the psychic piece that you're sharing, the numerology tips and tricks that you're sharing with your clients is just so resonant, like within them. So it was such a beautiful thing.
Wow. It's a beautiful
Pretty, right?
card.
It's
Wow.
gorgeous.
So pretty. Oh, thank you for
Gorgeous.
pulling that and just validating all of that for me today. That's beautiful. I
Oh,
received that.
good. I'm so glad. And for everyone else, similar message, but don't be afraid to be yourself. Show off your gifts, share your message. The world needs it. And
Beautiful.
Courtney, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your knowledge and your wisdom and your stories. I loved it. I loved having you, and thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.